You're listening to Unbridled with your host, Genevieve and Carly. Welcome to Unbridled.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm your host, Genevieve.
And I'm Carly.
And this is the show Unbridled, where we're going to be exploring the incredible world of equestrian sports. And today we're going to continue delving into the world of mounted games with our guest, Stacey.
Hello.
Good morning. It is so good to have you on the show. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Stacey Angelo. I'm not sure. I've been involved in mounted games for, I think I figured up last night, 28 years.
So was mounted games like your first exposure to horses, or did you grow up with horses?
I grew up with horses. I did 4-H, and I wish I'd have known about Pony Club.
Right.
And now I did speed events and stuff growing up, and I did jumping classes, and like I said, just everything in 4-H. But yeah, I would have loved to have known about Pony Club. But
the games. I always wish that I learned about it earlier. I was like 14 when I started, but you see some of the kids who are out there at like 5, and I'm like, oh, that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
Now,
and then when the girls were little, I pushed hard to try to find a pony club and found one when Brett was, I think, 7. So,
oh wow! And not all pony clubs do mounted games either.
No, but we were fortunate, very fortunate. Antietam Pony Club has just been defunct for a number of years now, but that's what we were in, and
that's fabulous. I ended up in Antietam because the pony club local to me just was anti-games. It wasn't one of those posh disciplines, kind of out of more of an area. So we went to Antietam where they're huge supporters.
Was that in Maryland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Based out of Boonesboro.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
There's a lot of good coaches in that area too. I remember we used to trailer out for coaching weekly. It was Joe, wasn't it? Joe Ann.
Oh.
Do you remember? She had the 2-toned hair, and I thought she was the coolest person on earth. She was,
and she real good friends with Val.
Yeah.
Remember, I can't think of her last name, but
I know me neither. And I think she got married too, and that always complicates things. But no, it was the best. I remember always riding the ferry when we were younger to get over. So in the Virginia area, there's a ferry between us and the Maryland Pony Club side. And
you would take the horse trailer across the ferry?
We would take the horse trailer over the ferry every week because it was the closest way through. Otherwise, it was like this long thing around. I remember always sitting there. I'd get out and stand with the horses while we're crossing the river. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you grow up in this area or?
I did. I was born in Maryland and around in Beaver County. And then I think I lived like 27 years in Virginia, right there in the tip of Northern Virginia. Mm-hmm. And then I've been in West Virginia for the last 6 or 7 years. So, tri-state area, 100%.
Yeah, and being able to like get plugged into the games community so young is just awesome. It's not common. You find that people are able to find like an Antietam Pony Club that is advocating for games so much compared to some of the others. So wait, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't even remember how I found Antietam Pony Club. I can't remember offhand, but anyway, we were very fortunate to do that.
Yeah. And it was like, so Carly, it was a thriving community back then. Like there was so many practices. You had all of these like coaches and clinicians. Like if you wanted to do mounted games right in this region, that was kind of like the place you had to get plugged in. And all those people were the ones going to nationals. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
It was good times.
Yeah. And I will say, like the girls had Michelle Riley, and she was just a fabulous, fabulous coach. But I did always encourage them to, if anybody else was doing a clinic, to ride with anybody that they could, just to get, all the tips and tricks from, because everybody, some people have things that work better for some people than others. And so
that's huge too. I think like to encourage kids, and you find that kids will get kind of locked into particularly early on, maybe a team or a particular coach, and it's fabulous that they have that support system, but always encouraging them to get on as many ponies and as many teams and with as many coaches as possible.
Yeah. And I do remember back in the days, my girls practiced at least 4 days a week back then.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
I mean, it was a full-on games practice because we had everybody would, trailer wherever and full-on games practices. So, yeah,
and that's paid off too. You look at that foundation that was laid for how successful they are now. When did they start really coming together? Like, how long did it take them with that kind of practice schedule to even make it to like a nationals or?
Oh my gosh. Well, so Brett was only 7 and you couldn't qualify for nationals until I think you were 10 in Pony Club back then. And I think she qualified her first year. She actually rode on a team with Michelle Riley's Pony Club because they needed a 5th rider. And so she rode with them. And then over the next couple of years, we ended up having like all of our kids seemed to be kind of the same age. We did have like a couple of older riders that were doing seniors in advance while ours were still, the bulk of ours were doing juniors and everything. But yeah, so I think by the time she was 10, and then as far as like, I think I was telling you that USMGA did not exist back then. The people that were running it it just became defunct and they just weren't doing anything with it. And a couple of us were trying to talk them into getting it back on and they just weren't interested. And so we started this organization called USEGA, United States Equestrian Games Association is what it stood for. And back then we only had 2 divisions. We had novice and I think it was masters. I don't think it was open. Novice and masters. And the funny thing is my girls team, they rode novice 1 or maybe 2 years right after we started that and then put them into masters. And they didn't even know it because I was always filling out their paperwork. One day Brett saw me putting down masters and she's like, Mom, we don't ride in masters. I said, well, you have been for a couple of years. And I don't know why she didn't know, but back then we had like D and E divisions in masters. So, we'd have like 5 different finals and of course they started out down the bottom and slowly worked their way up. And when they hit C finals, they were on top of the world, and then eventually they made it to A finals. But
is that before?
Go ahead, Carl.
Is that before the rings got a lot bigger? Was that when like there were only like a max of like 4 or 5 lanes? Okay.
Yes, 5 lanes, and we rode at. You've been to Jefferson County, right?
I have, yeah.
We had 5 teams in the Jefferson County ring.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wow. That's a little scary at times, I'm sure.
Imagine that now.
They just adjusted the game, I think, back then. When I started, which would have been 2005, I think is when I started. So it was the novice masters. I started in novice, and we had heats in novice too. And you're right. Like even when we had just like a B and an A final, it was the coolest thing to be last in A final. Like you're just so excited to even qualify by the end of, and your whole Saturday, it kind of changed because there was so much riding on your performance that first day just to be able to get into the lockdown heat for the following day. So it was a totally different, I think that history is kind of lost too with where we sit now in MGAA. We keep branching out with more divisions. We are in a position where we have so many lanes in the arena. The game has even changed because the arenas are so big now that we can literally go so quickly versus your Jefferson. When you've got 5 teams in there, you had to play different because you couldn't go at breakneck speed.
Right. Well, and back then too, I don't think everybody wasn't going as fast anyway. The skills just kept improving, and it became a necessity to find bigger rings because it just wasn't safe anymore. We were like up in New Jersey, we were having ponies crash into the fence every now and then. And So we had to get something bigger. We just had to.
It's a
And
little
so, yeah.
different here too, I think, because in the United States with just our terrain, we don't necessarily have the best grass footing like you might in your Ireland, like it doesn't matter how much it rains, you still pretty much have good footing. It's like a sponge.
Right.
But here we've
Right.
got to find arenas with proper footing. Otherwise, it also gets unsafe even on grass.
Mm-hmm.
So
It does. I mean, Brett did world pairs over in England one year, and it rained the whole time, and the footing wasn't that great. But
really?
they'll put the studs on the ponies and go, and of course they're not going quite as fast, but yeah, they they ride in just about anything. The best grass footing that I liked here was down at
Doswell?
down by Kings Dominion, Doswell, yeah,
Yep.
because it had sand in it, sand in the grass and stuff, and I thought that was really good footing. I know there were a couple people that did not like that footing at all, but I
No,
thought
I
that
agree.
was I thought it was really good as far as being in a grass footing.
So I think just in general, people gear up to either ride in any terrain. Like you think of venting, like you ride in any terrain. So we put shoes on, we got studs, we're ready for anything. And then you've got people who have the backyard ponies that they keep them barefoot at all times. And they don't necessarily maybe even have the knowledge of how to outfit your pony effectively for that kind of stuff. But Doswell was fabulous because it used to be like a sand, like it was like a parking lot or something that was sand
Yeah,
based. And then the
yeah,
grass came up through. And
yeah.
yeah,
I thought
I
it was
always enjoyed riding there.
yeah, and that was, and some people it's just comfort level.
Sure.
We used to practice in an open grass field that was down in Nearsville,
Yep.
and some people would come to practice with us, and there's like, "You don't have any fences up?" And it's like, "No." And you don't have any, like, they wanted the proper footing and stuff like
Yep.
that, and it's like, "Oh, we don't."
It would
This
just
is
be like
what
a
we
piece of caution tape to separate, your judges from the rest of this huge field, and then we just kinda set it out, and
Yeah,
it's even the same here when I ran the Sun and Fun pairs over the summer. There are some people pushing back, and they're like, "Oh, you don't have footing. My horse doesn't feel good in footing." And it's like, I mean, that makes sense because you probably don't practice in it, and
right,
I mean, they have to adjust, and you're right too. Just like riding in a small arena, riding on grass, you have to make adjustments. If there's bad
right.
weather, you gotta
Yeah,
slow down.
It
yeah,
changes the
ab
whole dynamic. I feel like a lot of horses that I ride, they choose to behave differently in grass versus in actual footing, and then you have to adjust yourself as well to make it work.
that's very true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Very
going
true.
to Ireland if we were to take one of our I have one of my ponies, Artie, who is adorable. This Appy, I've never seen an Appy react this way too. But last week when we had all the rain, you would put him out and he would put his nose to his chest and he'd be like avoiding the fact that there's any kind of mist in the air. It just water was lava out there. He was so unhappy in general. And I was thinking, man, there was that one nationals we had where it was torrential downpour in Pennsylvania. And I was like, man, you probably would not have been so happy.
Yeah, that's true. That's
But
true.
so when did, because my first recollection was you guys having Dusty, this like timeless pony that, came up and taught so many riders how to ride. When did you guys get Dusty?
We got her, let's see, she was, I think Brett was 10 and Dusty was 9. They were about the same age. And she was a little spitfire. She was only 12.3, but she took up a lot of leg and, she was a big 12.3. And she was yeah, it was just go. All she had was a go button at first, and you got one chance at anything in the ring, whatever race you were doing, you got one chance at it, and Dusty was gone, and my sister used to say, you're crazy, you shouldn't let her ride her." And but she was gentle. She wasn't mean. She never, ever, ever once bucked or reared or
Yeah.
anything like that. She jumped the litter basket sometimes. Back in, Pony Club, we had the little litter basket. she would jump that sometimes, just going. She was, and Brett was a little bit afraid of her, and we would lunge her a little bit to get started, and then when they clicked, that was it. And I remember one time we were at Pony Club Festival, and Robert Taylor was given the clinics down there for mounted games, and I think you had to. I forget. It seems like you signed up for 3 different clinics, and Brett would have done all games if she could have, but that you could only do 2 of the same one. So she did 2 games, and then probably 1 show jumping or whatever. She really liked jumping, and then Robert, he always had that big, gruff, intimidating voice. And there's certain things that people say over the years that just stand out and you never forget. And he said, "Brett, your pony's there, but you're not."
Wow.
Oh, that's so funny.
That was good. I mean, she at least had her pony there, but she was still trying to catch up to the speed and everything. And then, and it does. I was listening to your all's Wednesday night. Though I just listened to it last. Yeah, and you said some really, really good things, but usually we found over the years that it usually takes about 3 years to make a decent games pony. That took a good bit longer. Sometimes they take a good bit longer, and Dusty was one of those. It took a little bit longer with her, but yeah.
I think so. So you are addicted to pony shopping, as am I.
Oh my
gosh.
That
you love it.
Completely.
So where do you go? And I guess this is like a 2-part question. Where do you go to find ponies? And how long? Because you do something similar with me, and you bring ponies into kind of the sport, you fill them out. And if they work for the sport, great. If they don't, then you find a discipline that's suited for them and a good home. How long do you give them to kind of mature into that and make that decision? A lot of new riders come to me and they're like, how do you find ponies? And how long do I wait to know if this is the right pony?
Well, first of all, you nailed it last night to answer your first question about where. And we love the auctions too. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there aren't too many left anymore. Yeah. So that's getting really difficult. And then sometimes we do Dream Horse and stuff like that. Now, it's pretty much, as you said, Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that. Well, more Facebook groups, and join in all the different groups you can. And like Reagan is kind of looking right now. She's going to be out for like 2 years, but she's kind of looking right now for her next prospect. And so we kind of know, what she wants. And she tends everybody has their own preferences. Even my girls, they typically do not like the same kind of pony at all. And that's absolutely fine. 100%. Brett likes the more sensitive ponies that, really listen to you. Bree doesn't mind fighting with a hard-headed Bubba or whatever. So they're just really different. Reagan likes a more narrow build, and I don't know, and she really likes the Welsh Arab crosses. So I've just been doing internet searches, and Bree's Flirt that I found that she's riding right now. I just did a search on Facebook for a 13-3 hand pony or mare or something like that. And she popped up, and she is just exactly the kind of pony that Bree likes. But she had been listed, this was like November or December last year. She had been listed back in March. And I was like, well, she's long gone. But I sent a picture away, and Bree's like, oh, Mom, please find out. And so I contacted the people, and he's like, well, yeah, she is still available. And so anyway, we took a huge risk with her. She was down in Oklahoma, and we were trying to get down to see her, but the girls' schedules are just so crazy.
Expensive.
And we just could not make it work for all of us to run down there. And so we talked for several weeks, maybe as much as 6 weeks or so, to the guy, and he sent us videos, and he was like 73 years old, a little, guy that worked on ranches and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I'm not in a hurry to sell her because she's pretty easy to get on, with her smaller height and everything. And he's just so sweet. And Bree sends him videos all the time of Flirt from the
That's
competition.
fabulous.
That's so
Yeah.
sweet.
But the way we kind of got into buying and selling games ponies is Brett was looking for a replacement for Dusty, because Dusty was starting to get up in age and stuff like that. And we would find them, and we'd find good ones. And but the girls, they just didn't quite click
Just
with them.
not
And
the
so,
fit.
right. So we sold them, and sometimes we'd buy them back. When you were talking about left-handed, doing left-handed stuff and everything, we had one pony, Friday. He was a little pink pony. I don't know if you remember him. I think Bonnie Bowden was the one that ended up with him. And he was a fabulous little pony, but you could absolutely only do left-handed with him. And
Wow.
one person bought him, and they were like, well, I'm going to teach him to go right-handed. It's like, okay, well, good luck with that, because don't think I didn't try. And it didn't work out. So we bought him back. And Brett actually learned to do a whole lot of stuff left-handed with him. And then I want to say we sold him 3 different times until he found the right, and then we kept buying him back, and because we just loved him, and he was such a good boy. But and then finally him and Bonnie really seemed to click, and so that was cool. And then the other thing about the left-handed, I just wanted to comment on that, is there was a point in time, you also you just hit so much stuff on that, like the ponies think they know, and they anticipate, and then they're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to do this. Well, Dusty got into that with 3 Mug, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
And she was just blowing it up because she was doing her own thing. And Michelle said, Brett, try it left-handed. And so Brett started doing 3 Mug left-handed on Dusty to get her to listen. And they got it down that way really, really, really well. And so, yep. So a lot of good advice that you all gave the other night.
Well, thank you. And I think that's one thing I am blessed with, and you are too, to have gone through a couple of ponies, find them the right homes, and kind of be able to step back and realize that the pony that I bought doesn't have to be the pony that's going to work for me, and I make it fit a mold. And I find a lot of newer riders, maybe they think that they've made a commitment by buying this pony, and now we've got to work together as a pair and bond for the rest of eternity.
Right.
And it's like, but no, maybe that pony's perfect rider is, sitting right over there, that loves everything that pony is, and it just doesn't fit like a puzzle piece for you.
Right. But then we love it when they do turn out to be games ponies that my girls don't click with, that we sell to the games community, and we love getting to see them throughout the years. I think the only one really left out there is Leanne's Custer. Wait a minute, no.
Custard or Gilligan?
No, does she call him Custer or Dallas? Custer.
I think it's
Leanne Mustang.
The bay.
I'm sorry. Well, he's chestnut.
Is he? Oh, you're right. He's a dark chestnut, isn't he?
Yeah.
Mustang.
Yeah. She calls him Custer.
Custer. Okay. I get that confused. His name was Dallas then when we had him, and then she changed it to Custer. So I still, I guess, call him Dallas and get it confused. But anyway, I think he's the only one left. And of course, she absolutely adores him. And it makes us so happy to see him go on and do. And I mean, you had Pepper. He was such a
Pepper, Betty, Halo. We had Sriracha.
Oh yeah, Skittles.
I've got
Skittles, didn't you?
Skittles too. I remember picking Skittles up. So she was a Craigslist ad, and she was down past Winchester. And I remember going out, and they kind of just threw like this big Western curb on her, and I got on her in a Western saddle in this massive open field, and she was just sensitive. And at the time, she was very up, like she would pop up a lot, and they're like, she's dangerous. And was like, no, she's perfect. Like this pony's going to be cool. But she was way too small for me because I'm really, really tall. So reiterate, if you haven't seen me in person, I found this out at work, by the way. People who work with me like across the country, I'll show up on site and they'll be like, I thought you were like so much smaller. So I'm actually like over 6'1" tall. I'm a giant. And so like a 13 3-hand pony is really just way too petite. And she's pretty compact too.
Right. Yeah, she is. She's a big girl, but
She's very
there's a
big.
lot in her little package. But yeah. And so talk about one bringing her along.
She's
But I think they
time.
finally have their vaults down this year that pretty consistently at this point. She has been a really hard one to teach to go straight on the vault. So,
I
but
ended up
yeah, but
having
Brett,
a pony like that too, where I had to try to offside vault for a while because he would just drift so severely. But you throw the offside on and he's like, oh, okay, this is fine. But yeah, the ponies when they drift, that takes some time.
Just to get a
Yeah.
better understanding, Genevieve, when did you get Skittles to, or are we talking about Skittles or confetti,
No, this is
basically?
Skittles.
Okay. What year was that? And you're saying that she's just now going straight for vaults?
Yeah.
How many years is that?
Probably like 12 or 13 years ago. I want to say
she's
the Stokes, I
young.
traded her. I had her, was working her. I was like, she's too petite for me. And I knew that she needed time. So she was super green. So I had gone to the Stokes and they had like a 14 3-hand Appy gelding at the time. It's like a white Appy, very few spots, but he was much taller and he was really green and he was sort of in a similar situation. His name was Remington at the time and they had taken him out in green like once. And I was like, look, I could work that pony. He kind of fits me better. She's got so much potential, but she needs time. And so we ended up trading the two ponies and the Stokes had her for a while. And then I think you got her from the Stokes?
From Katie when she hung up her, not spurs, her hard hat or whatever. From Mountain Gate. Yeah. So I want to say we've probably had her 4 years now, maybe or something like that. But
yeah, I want to say
because
10, maybe 10 years then, because I'm thinking Hero, and Hero I've probably had for 7 or 8 years now. So it was like 2 years before Hero.
Yeah. But the really good ones are worth it.
They are. And that's what I tell people. I've had some of the newer parents come to me and they're like, so what age do you look for? And I'm like, honestly, if it's the right fit, it doesn't really matter the age. If it could be young, and sometimes it does happen where you have a young pony that's just got a great brain and it works out. But if the pony's 15, it doesn't matter because a lot of games ponies go well into their 20s.
Very well into their 20s. Just one more thing about Skittles. Brett did say the other day that Skittles is the closest to Dusty that she's ever had out of any of them. Dusty really, she reminds her of her. And yeah, the other thing about the right fit, it's just, I did like Pony Club used to say that the rider and the pony's age should equal at least 20, meaning, the younger the rider, the older the pony that they should have, because they should have something more experienced and everything. And I always thought that was a really good baseline to go with. But we got Bubba, I want to say Bubba was 11 or 12, maybe 13. And we got him up at the sale in Thurmont. And he had been a little eventing pony. And we got him the girls decided they were going to teach lessons, but that never panned out. They just don't like to teach lessons for some reason. And so one day, Bree had Paunch at the time, and he was getting older, and she's like, I need a new games pony. And she went down and got on Bubba one day. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting my whole life to do. I mean, he was a great little, lesson pony. But when he started doing games, he loved it. And he was one, it didn't take a long, long time. I'm going to say probably 2 years. He was doing wonderful at the top level of open. So we actually had one, I don't know if you remember Poncho. He was a little chestnut with the 4 white
I remember
legs
you
and the
started
pretty.
025 on him.
Yeah, he was a beautiful little pony. Well, no, that was Ponch. Poncho was a different. We had a Ponch and a Poncho, but
Poncho was a chestnut and white?
Poncho Poncho was a chestnut, and he had a big wide blaze and 4 white feet.
Yes.
They're
Okay,
soft.
yeah.
He's just a really pretty little guy, and, he had been a little Western play day pony, and so he literally we had him in open literally in 1 month. He was out there
Wow.
competing, and he was fabulous. He was absolutely the exception because 'cause we've never
Yeah.
had another one go to get, take to it like that. But, and the girls, we loved him. He was such a sweet little guy, but he ran with his neck down, and the
It's
girls
so
liked
different.
their
Yeah.
horse. Yeah, they like their horse to ride with its head high, and so we kept him for years, and we, loan him out all the time because we loved him, but the girls, he just wasn't the one. So, I think we ended up selling him to Evan Becker when Evan Becker was, I don't know, like 12 or something
Yep.
like that, and
Oh,
so
wow, yeah. So I had one that I still distinctly he was such a cool pony. It was this dark Grula pony that had, like, the stripes on his legs and a stripe down his back, but I got him at Thermont as well Friday night. And he had such a good handle. He was clearly from the Midwest, broken Western. He was probably like 11 years old, so he wasn't even that young. But the next day I took him to a summer sizzler and he was fabulous. Like literally 12 hours later, we threw him out on the games field and we're like, I mean, what could happen? And he was just so good.
I
And
did,
he
I think I
immediately
remember that. Yeah, I
he
think
was
I
so
remember
cool.
that, yeah, and that's another thing that you touched on last night about the Western ponies just being trained so well. Flirt, she's only is she 5 or 6? So she's kind of, on the young side,
Wow.
but she was broke so, so, so well, and so Bree had no intentions whatsoever of putting her in open this year, but Bibbs, we just couldn't keep her sound, so
Mhm.
she had to throw Flirty into it, and she's handling it pretty well.
Doing so
Pretty
good.
well. So handoffs are still a little bit sticky, but she was just broke so well and just has such a good little brain that she's taken to it pretty good.
It's really fun when you get the pony that has had a proper foundation. It's so
Mhm.
rare too. I think when you rework ponies that come from auction so frequently, you're like, man, you almost have to deconstruct it and be like, where are all the holes? When you get that pony that had like the right foundation and you can take them. And then it goes back to no matter what you do with horses, if you put the time into building the right foundation, they can pretty much go anywhere and be successful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You pay more for that good foundation. Pay considerably more, but, boy, she was worth it. And again, especially with my girls' schedules these days, there's no more 4-day-a-week practices. There's
Yeah.
riding them to condition them one night and Bree riding them to condition them the next day when she's got a few hours, and it's just and that's all they really do is condition at this point unless they can run over to Lovettsville and actually get a practice in now and again, but
How often? So, for kids who are starting out, I guess backing up, what would be your biggest piece of advice to them and the parents?
if they're just starting out, they they want something, in my opinion, that has a lot of experience. So yeah, it's something older, and the brain is the biggest thing. And when we go to try one out, well, I want to see something that uses its back end
Mhm.
and isn't constantly on its forehand. I really want to see something that uses its back end to make the turns and stuff like that. Um, but we'll go ahead and like the girls, we'll try not necessarily to vault, but stand on the side and jump up and down, the pony just to see, because that can tell you a lot of
Yeah.
how the pony handles that. And then, if like you said, take some flags or bottles or whatever and shake around them and see what they do. And like we had one time, I forget which one it was, but it scared them. Whatever we did, it scared them. But their response was just, they kind of jumped, but they jumped in place and then they settled down immediately. And so it's like, yeah, that one's going to be fine. It's
Right.
the one that, can't get over it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. That's the ones that I would probably steer away from unless there's something. I mean, and it depends on the experience
sure.
of the rider, obviously. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with a, like you said, 17 or 18-year-old pony to start with. There's nothing wrong at all for somebody just starting out, and they will go. We've had several go into their late 20s. So
Yeah, I remember Chip, he was really my first games pony, that Bay Arab pony. He went until he was 31. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got him when he was like I don't know, he was probably 9. I pulled him from auction. He was scrawny and he was named Chip because he looked like a chipmunk. His cheeks were so puffy with like this Polish Arab coat. But he just ended up being so cool and he just kind of stuck around. But and I think parents too, they're like, well, I want my kid to grow old with it. And it's like, but if you step back, you've got ponies that have all this experience and maybe they can't carry the weight of like a Genevieve or an adult rider. They need a place to go and be able to pass on that wisdom.
Mm-hmm. I remember, that reminds me of, several years ago now, I guess time flies, but Jake Cohn came to one of the competitions, and I think it was Kaya Newell. She was on Sparky, and I can't remember who was on the little black pony that Jake had. And then I think Eliza was on Dusty, and I can't remember. But they had a fabulous team of very experienced games ponies. They were getting older. And oh my gosh, and Jake said, wow, what a set of ponies that team has.
It's so
And
cool too when the pony really knows. And I talk about like not over patterning or not over practicing, but ponies that have competed for 15 years, they do know the patterns. And I remember when I handed DJ down to my mom and I kind of moved on to a pony, I got to compete him in open for like 2 years and then moved on. She got on him, and I remember her first competition out, she was playing, I think like Postman's, and she'd gotten the card, and she was like, Jen, I dropped my reins and I panicked. And she was like, but that pony weaved all the way home and then passed the pony for the handoff on his own. And it's so cool to think that you kind of have a partner that has that kind of experience in a pony.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Punch when I was riding over 25, and I think it was the very first practice I had on him. I was doing high-low, and I went down to, put the cone in the net, or the ball in the net, and he turned back for home, and I almost fell off of it because I wasn't as fast as he was. He knew exactly what he was doing, and oh my gosh, he was such a good pony. And we always said that he could read Bree's mind, because if she messed up something, he was stopping and turning around. He just knew.
So
he
cool.
was fabulous. And then Michelle Riley had that pony Tease, and one time we're like, he would run the bending poles himself, and so whoever was on him, they just put the reins down and he ran through the poles all by himself.
He was such a cool pony. So Michelle Riley, shout out to anybody who was coached. I was lucky too. I was coached by Michelle also. She kind of like pulled me in, which was great because I was like kind of an outsider and had gone to Antietam a couple of times, and she saw me and she's like, you've got to come to practice and get involved here. And it was so good to have somebody that had experience that was so welcoming. And it was my introduction really to the sport, that when you try to jump into like an eventing world, you don't have a ton of money, or even dressage show jumping, you don't have the money for the tack, the pony, etc. People give you looks, and there's like, you're kind of like an outsider. But I never ever felt that way in mounted games. And every person, even these experienced coaches like Michelle that had so many incredible kids going to nationals, she would just be like, just show up, get out there. Here's like some, old equipment, just so encouraging. And I think that there's so many people in our sport that are like that.
Yeah, she really was, and lended ponies left and right. And yeah.
pulled teams
Yeah,
together.
she was, yep, pretty amazing.
And that's one thing I know we touched on in the last episode, but we went from having kind of coaches that were dispersed because it was a little more pony club centric, I think, 20 years ago, to now when we're shifting to everyone's an adult or you're bringing kids into a sport it's not pony club, we're in like MGAA or USMGA, whatever it is. You don't necessarily have a coach that's plucking people out and forming teams. And almost the organizer is being put in a position of helping riders find places to ride, but they're willing to do it. And like an encouragement, I think, for people who are just now coming into the sport to continue reach out to an organizer or someone else in a position within the organization. Because you're right, people will loan ponies. People have extra ponies that they want to get ridden, or they want to help fill out teams.
Yeah. I wish we had more. We used to keep a couple of extras, but like I said, with the girls being older, it's so hard now. But yeah, we always loved being able to help out and lend ponies when we could. So, and then that I would just reminded me of something like from organizers' standpoint. We used to do all kinds of things up there at our little summer sizzlers, and we would do the ones where you just came and you didn't have a partner, and
Gambler's choice.
We drew for each session. You drew a different partner, and I thought that was a really good way for people to get to know each other and, try different things. And then we even at one point had one where you rode a different pony for every session and you drew your pony too. And I guess I thought it was great, but I don't know that it went over really, really well because some people weren't comfortable with other people riding their ponies and stuff. But that was a great way to get riders ready to go like overseas and stuff like that. So,
well, that's a really good point too. When you compete overseas, particularly because I think I'm not aware of us having a ton of world competitions here, obviously, or the high level competitions. For the most part, if you want to be recognized like that, you have to go overseas, which means you're borrowing a pony. So at the highest level of competition, you're not even riding your own horse.
Right. Yeah. We've had, I think, since I've been in mounted games, the U.S. has hosted 2 world team championships, and then one we did. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of it. World Equestrian Games. The U.S. hosted that down in Kentucky a few years ago, and we were able to, several years ago now, but we were able to do. We had enough for 2 different, we had one competition over 3 days, I think, and then a second competition over 3 days. So there were 2 US teams, and then I know there was Great Britain and, probably,
so cool.
I don't know, several different countries came over. And Kathy and Taylor and I were responsible for barn managers for all the ponies and taking care of all the ponies. And we had, if memory serves me correctly, we had a big tent with stabling set up inside. And so that was a lot of fun.
That's so
and
cool.
People were wonderful with donating their ponies and everything. But yeah, when you go overseas, you got to ride whatever you're given.
It's like and I always tell people with my horses, and I think it was illustrated like recently for me too, but when I'm training a pony, the ultimate validation is when somebody else can get on my pony and do the same thing just as well. And especially when you have a tricky pony, like I have my pony Hero, and I've been trying so hard to get him to a point where basically other riders can get on him. I've had Katie get on him. Carly's gotten on him now, and he's still effective with a different size rider. But then I know when Billy got on him at competition, Billy rode him brilliantly. And when he jumped off, Hero had kind of like his old school reaction where he got really anxious about getting back on. And it just continues to remind you that there might be a gap that you have to reiterate, but you'd never see that if you were the only rider.
Yeah.
And it's so, I guess, queuing back, because I don't have a lot of like high level competition experience overseas. I've ridden overseas, but not on like a world platform. So your girls did ride overseas though and compete for worlds.
How many times did they go over there?
Brett rode on world teams twice. She made it a third time, but she decided not to go. And then she rode world pairs twice. And then she was on the Pony Club International team in Australia. And then Robert Taylor used to take a team over. Him and Janie Lawrence used to take a team over every year. And both my girls went one year with Robert too. And then Bree also went up to, Bree was on the world team in Switzerland with Brett. And then she went up to Norway and did a little, it was so much fun, so much fun.
Cool.
And that's such a cool thing about the games community is getting to know people when you do the overseas trips from all over the world. And so it was just 3 teams. It was a England team and Norwegian team and a US team. And we went up and it was like they were having this big fancy show, kind of like what's the big at the Washington horse show, the big fancy
horse show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they were having that and we did a little games competition as, like a sideshow for that. And Bree went up for that. And we flew up through the night, Thursday night, and they got to ride their ponies Friday night. And then they competed Saturday and Sunday, and we flew home first thing Monday.
Wow, short trip.
It was so much fun, and the people were fabulous, just absolutely fabulous. So it was such a good experience.
That's something I think with mounted games so I grew up, I did like eventing up until I was in my teens, and I've kind of done it since periodically, but games kind of became my focus once I found the sport. It's like, oh, this is so cool. But when you try to socialize the sport to new people, they're like, oh, this is brand new. I've never seen this. But it's actually a very well-established sport in a lot of countries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's 24, 25 countries that do mounted games, and we tried so hard, and I'm sure they probably still are, but for several years we were trying really, really hard to get it recognized as for Olympics, but
it's going to be difficult. Equestrian sports are so hard to get into there, right? But it's worth fighting for because it's such a great spectator sport.
It is, yeah. And when we did the competitions at WEG, it went over really, really well. And it was a lot of fun. So
that was what I think is crazy is how many upper level eventer, show jumper, dressage riders, particularly once you get to the highest levels, it starts to get saturated with a lot more men who are very, very good and have kind of like stayed focused. But most of those men who are competing at the highest level really actually started with mounted games. Because when you're a kid, that's where it's fun, right? And we have a lot more, I think, versus other equestrian sports where it's very much like there's a lot of women that compete, not as many boys, because it's a little bit posh in a way, not always, but usually. But mounted games, you get them out there and you've got kids that are rough and tumble. You have whole teams of like younger boys that are out there. It's so cool, and it's such a great way to expose people to this world of horses.
It is, and Bree was my timid rider when she was growing up and everything. And between mounted games, of course, she joined Pony Club when she was 6, and the only thing that she could do was dressage and games rally. And of course, dressage when you're 6 years old isn't really fun.
It's hard.
But mounted games was, but I don't know if this was Pony Club wide or just Maryland region, but they couldn't do jumping rallies until they were 8 years old. So that was literally all she could do. But, and then we got really interested in polocrosse for a while. And between polocrosse and mounted games, she forgot to be afraid of riding. And look at the rider she is now. And
it's so impressive.
Because of mounted games and polocrosse, definitely both of those. She would just get out there, and both my girls are competitive by nature, but she would get out there and she'd want to win, and she completely forgot to be afraid of the ponies. And so
And it's worth noting, so
it's
people who are not in, like, our particular region or competing, Brett and Bree, her daughters, are on a team called Punk Rock Ponies, who have
Mhm.
notoriously been in, like, the top 2 teams for years at our highest level of competition, and it really echoes back to all the practice they had when they were younger, but also now as adults with them, as you said, not practicing even every week. If you put the time in, you can get to a point where it just is part of your nature with riding, and you're right, the fear kinda leaves you, and now it's just horses.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, they would love to be able to practice more some of the stuff, but yeah, mostly all they can do these days is keep their ponies conditioned. But yeah, they have such a strong foundation, and again, good coaching over the years, and with lots of different, lots of different coaches. Michelle was absolutely their main coach, but like I said, the clinics, and I do wish, I'm kind of sad that Carol Ann's clinic didn't get lots of interest, because I think there's something good to learn from anybody that's willing
You're
to
right.
put on clinics and stuff like that. And I love that Val and Krista are doing the games camps and everything. That's
We gotta keep driving
right.
that interest. Sorry, I didn't mean to echo there.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say, right, as many people as you can, and that's probably true with any sport,
It is
to
in
jump.
the United States too, it's a little bit hard because our land mass, we're so spread out. And
Right.
so even just finding like that good clinician. I was talking to Adrienne, who's way up north, and she's kind of the person I go to for advice when I'm training horses. Everyone has to have someone to bounce ideas off of. And she
Mhm.
puts a lot of time into working a lot of different horses, but with a lot of different kids. And I think she's an effective teacher. And it's like, how do you even bring someone that's, up towards like the Vermont area all the way down to us to even host a clinic? Make sure that you have the turnout. It's almost cost prohibitive. So we were talking about, is there an opportunity for us to start recording clinics and create a platform where people can see some stuff online?
Do
It's
something more virtual.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're right, with Carol Ann's clinic, we need to drive participation, and also how do we like evangelize a sport? That's kind of, I think, where this podcast came out of was, hey, we have such an incredible group of people. We love this sport. We love what we get to do with our ponies, but so many people haven't even heard of it. And when you go to a practice publicly and someone shows up and you end up spending 30 minutes talking about the sport, there's no real place to just point them and be like educational content. We
Mm.
haven't really digitized enough. So there's so much opportunity, which is kind of exciting.
That's a
Right.
good idea. I was just thinking, maybe one thing you might want to do at some point is like take some videos there, because there are lots of videos out there, and and not critique, but teach people from it, like
Yeah.
show, what they're doing right, everything that they're doing right, and just to teach people. That might be an idea.
Agreed. And I saw a Western trainer out of Dallas did this recently. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. Similar. But she was like, hey, post your videos of issues that you're having with your sport. There's barrel racing reining. And we'll go on to our YouTube channel and we'll talk about, ways that I've encountered that and been able to work through it in the past. So not only
Mhm.
doing, and you're right, like educational on how to do the skills, but also like some problem solving or coaching and clinician-y type stuff. But doing it here, I
Mhm.
think would be really, really cool. Or even having guests
Yeah.
on and having them kind of correspond with it too. So much potential, which is exciting. So any of those ideas, send them to us too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just like so much opportunity with this platform. It's going to be exciting. But we'll add like, and we can cut this out, so I'll just talk to you for a second, but we'll add like maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes on, so that anything that we have to condense down, we still get close to an hour. But I really want to talk about, so I guess I'll launch here. I really want to talk about, because my mom experienced it. How did you feel coming into this sport as maybe an adult who's coming back to horses, but you had watched and participated and supported your daughters, and then you had come back and you had ridden for several seasons in the mounted games. I mean, what was that
Yeah.
experience like for you?
Well, it was a lot of fun. back when I did it, we were called fossils, and we could take a joke and laugh at ourselves and everything. And it was fun, and it was a little bit competitive. And it amazes me at how competitive the O25 division got over the years, which is good. It's a good thing. And it's still fun, but it really took off and got competitive, and it's wonderful to see the numbers. It's absolutely wonderful. But back when I was doing it, we used the tall, like the Windsor cones for like ball and cone. We cheated a little bit. But it was fun. It was so much fun. And I had done a lot of barrel racing and pole bending and stuff like that. Like I said, even when my girls were young, me and one of my best friends, we'd drag my girls all over barrel racing and pole bending, and they thought she was really cool. They didn't think mom was really cool. But anyway, and then we had started them into, like I said, the little local shows until we found Pony Club. But then when I got back into it, it was so much fun. And it's with people that you knew anyway, because, they were doing the same thing, supporting their kids and everything. So it was just a lot of fun. And that it's the whole games community. It's just like a big family,
Yep.
a big family. And when Brett and Kyle got married, Kyle's side of the family, it was all family. His side of all the people that he invited, it was all family. Brett's side, it's mostly games, mostly those people that she grew up with, literally. And they had over 200 guests at their wedding. And I bet at least, I was going to say 50 or 60, but it's probably like 70 of the people on her side were from Mounted Games. So it really has been a big, huge family over the years. And I used to always say my favorite part of the competitions is Saturday night when we do the potluck dinners and everything. Yep. And you get time to chat with people and everything. It's just...
It is. And it's, I think, what drives a lot of people to continue, even though it gets hard. You get out of college, you start adulting, you've got, it's just a lot of time being kind of like taken away from what maybe you did when you were a teenager with competing. But I feel like so many families kind of, and oddly, there are big family units in Mounted Games that still compete. Mm-hmm. I was looking at it with my entry into this upcoming competition in the O25 division. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 errands.
Give me time out.
We might have to wrap it up because we're coming up on an hour.
So I figured we'd go a little bit over, unless it's going to cut out on us. The only reason is that way we can take the dead space and still hit 58.
Yeah, it shouldn't cut out.
Perfect. So I figured like another 10 minutes.
Take that part out with my Roomba kicking on.
What'd you say, Carly?
I'm just jotting down the times. Anytime we say we're going to take something out, I got the times written down.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Jen, you were saying about big family units that you were noticing or something.
Yeah. So, my family, we have my brother. So we have Thomas, we have Carly, we have Billy, we have Chase, we have my mom, and then Kimberly, who's basically family that's grown up with us, right? And myself. So we're up to like 7 people that kind of go as a unit. And you look at there's, Phyllis's family. You've got all of like Ashley, we've got Jesse, we've got so many people in this family unit that all compete in games. And for those who don't know the sport, on the weekends that we compete at like our proper competition, you're going to have, everybody showing up on a Friday, you're pulling in, getting set up with your stalls and getting your, if you're camping, you're going to get your camp all set up. And then we compete over 2 sessions on Saturday. So you have kind of like your AM session, your PM session, which is where you shuffle out points to prepare for heats if you've got heats, or you've got your finals on Sunday. And then Saturday is pretty much like our potluck camping. Everybody's hanging out with this big community of people who all love horses.
Mhm.
And then Sunday is kind of our final, and we pack up and we head home. But we do that, 6+ times a year. And you're right, everybody just becomes like this community over time.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
It's
Going back
so fun.
to when I was riding, one of my very favorite times was, we did the family pair and a spare, and
Mhm.
I got to ride with Bree one time, and oh my gosh, that was so much fun.
It
It
was
was so
different too, and I think some of that history gets lost over time, but, like, we had novice, we had masters, and then we created, like, fossils because we wanted a division where parents could come on and ride with their kids. It really was, like, for family to kinda promote that, and I know at the time we didn't have restrictions on, like, what age, and there was a lot of kinda little family teams that started popping up, or more of, like, the family, like, pair spare, and then we
Mhm.
started to get even everybody just got really competitive over time. And
Yep,
particularly when
yep.
we got, I think, in the bigger arenas and everybody was forced into an arena at once. Now it doesn't matter where you sit throughout the entire weekend, you're still competing with the highest level of riders in that
Right.
division. So it definitely
Yeah.
changed the dynamic over time.
It did, and I've loved that some of your 25 riders have come back to master to open.
Yep.
Masters still gets sometimes. I love that. I feel like sometimes people get intimidated and feel stuck in a division,
Mhm.
and I don't like that at all. That's the one thing, when you only had 2 divisions, you only spent a year or 2 at the most in novice, and then because that was usually for walk trot people, and so you had to move up. And now people kinda sometimes, but I think they're coming out of that now too, which makes me really, really, really happy because I was seeing teams stay in intermediate for years, and
Yep.
it's like, you need to try something else, and
Yeah.
then it was so good to see all the, riders in O25 come back to masters or open. I'm sorry, I
And
keep
we're
doing
one of
that.
those teams, I think, that recently transitioned from O25 where we were kind of constantly scrambling. And then we just kind of found a good mix of riders for our Uncharted team that we have now. And we're all about the same age. But we kind of made a commitment over the winter when we were talking. We're like, hey, I don't know what is really holding us back from moving over to open. And we're all like, they're not going to like us or it's going to, and we're like, is that really valid when we started talking about it? And our first competition, everyone was so welcoming. Like it was such a cool thing because we're like, okay, maybe it wasn't like it was all in our heads. And it has been so fun this year, even if you're not in the top of the mix, to have riders that you have looked up to for years. You're in the same arena as them, but then, they give you a pat on the back as you walk out because we're all there together, just doing our best.
Absolutely.
Also, the
Yep.
fear of not being competitive. Like, I think we were just worried that we were just gonna basically get crushed, like, the first time we went in there, and then we started realizing, "Okay, everybody's not waiting for us to finish our race most of the time. We're good, like, we fit in
Exactly.
here. We're okay."
Well, that's what so I always video my team, and so I can't see what else is going on, and I hate that part of it. But, you know, there is no perfect team out there, as you all are well aware. There is no perfect team, and everybody makes mistakes, and so I'll be videoing them, and it might be a particularly rough race for punk rock ponies, and I'm cringing and trying so hard not to say anything I shouldn't say on the video. And then they finish and I look up and they still got like second or third place and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, everybody must have blew this race up." And that happens sometimes, absolutely. And it's nobody's guaranteed first place or second place and anything can happen out there, as we all know. It's ponies, and no matter how much we train, things just go wrong
Happen.
sometimes.
Yeah. And that's
Yes.
what, like, is so exciting about our sport as a team sport too. Even if I go out there and I have a brilliant run, I have the rest of my team that has to, if everything sort of has to align to really, if you're going
Mhm.
to win, and everybody has to have like kind of that same amount of luck or that same amount of time investment. And you're right, like just one person with it going wrong, or the pony spooks at a flag on the side of the arena, like it could be that one thing that changes an entire race. So you don't have to
Yeah.
be perfect and you don't have to be the fastest. And I see a lot of younger riders and they go out and they just want to be fast. And it's like, no, honestly, because if you're clean, then when somebody else makes a mistake, you're still there.
Right.
Yeah. You said that the other day too on Wednesday night about you don't look for speed in ponies. And there's been a couple of our ponies that we had no idea how fast they were till we had them for 2 or 3 years, because the girls never, ever, ever push them until they learned what they're doing. Never push them. Bree just, like I said, with Flirt, she was letting her go her own pace for until this last competition, and she's like, "Yep, I finally pushed her a little bit in one race." And so yeah, that's the funny thing is you don't, and they don't have to be the fastest thing on the face of the earth, because there's only so many feet. I mean, you want them to be able to, take off kind of quick, but they don't have to be the fastest thing out there. And like Ponch, he wasn't that fast, but when you have your really consistent riders that can do all the really technical parts better than your faster riders, and they complement each other in the middle of a race. And there for a long time, Bree could not vault. Because Ponch was like 14-1, and she was like 8 years old when she was riding him, and she couldn't vault for years, but he was her safe pony that she felt really comfortable with. And so she would stirrup up, and she could stirrup up as fast as a lot of people could vault, and it didn't, so that didn't matter either, because she had a good pony that would stand there while she stirruped up, and a lot of times she was on faster. So yeah, speed's definitely not everything, unless you're doing balloon race or something.
Right. Got a couple, and you're right. Like, I had my issues with Hero for a long time with getting back on. He just was really traumatized, and I pulled him from auction, and he was kind of a bit of a mess for years. But with mounted games, unless you make a mistake, you can also take that pony and rotate him out of those vaulting races as you're developing them. So if a rider, to me, I always tell people, like, you get fast at your skills before you expect the pony to go fast. If you can play the
100%.
stuff effectively.
Yeah, 100%.
And I had a thought, Carly. Sorry. I'm like, wait, let me jot this time down. Yes, I had a thought about, it's gone 100%. Never mind. 106. We're removing Jen. But yeah, it is shocking how far we have come, I think, in the past 20 years as an organization, and how big that we've like truly grown to be. And I think that there's a lot of potential to bring people in. It gets into like technicalities of expansion. It's
Right.
I know it's going to be hard for you guys, even just running that extra heat this upcoming competition.
Yeah, that is. It'd be nice to have 2 lanes or two rings, but then you need all the equipment and stuff. But yeah,
You mentioned equipment.
but
Okay, so that got me back on my thought. Thank you. Equipment. All right, so you have a new rider that's coming into mounted games. What would be your recommendation for things that they could start with? What is like the core stuff that you think would help them get started, even if they don't necessarily have a coach right by them?
So that was the one thing about like the pony club poles. We used to make them out of paint cans and then stick a PVC pipe down in the middle of them. And so you can make a basic set of equipment for a little bit of nothing. And obviously you need poles, and then you can get the batons, just a closet rod at Home or Home
Home
Depot or
Depot.
Lowe's or whatever. And then you can get the dowel rods, the 4-foot dowel rods there too, that you need for flag races. You don't have to have a flag on it. It'd be good, and you could even staple a little piece of cloth on too, if you want to get your pony used to the waving of the flag. And you can get the camping mugs anywhere, and you can buy a trash can and turn it upside down, and you can put, I mean, you want a flat surface, so you cut out a piece of wood or whatever. That's a little bit more difficult, but to get your flat surface for your barrel, but you could get away with probably just having one barrel too, you
Yep.
know?
That's
And I
what I
think if
try
you
to tell
start out
people.
that
It doesn't have to be
I'm sorry.
expensive.
Oh, did Jen stop? Is she stuck?
Genevieve's frozen right now on my
Oh,
end.
God.
Her audio is going in and out.
Yeah. Oh,
Did we lose
she's gone.
her? Oh,
Am I
she's
back?
coming back. Hi, you're back. You're still a little blurry for me, but that's okay.
Am I?
Yeah.
I think I'll record on my side because I look clear to me.
Right. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Sorry. We
Oh
shouldn't have
no.
stopped. But anyway, yeah, if you can just get enough of the basic stuff, you don't have to have bank race and joust race and in balloon boards. You could do those. They're really easy to make too. But you don't have to have all that stuff just to get the basics down with the pony, get them training to make the turns and the stops and all that stuff. So, but yeah, that's what we used to do. But then I'd like to jump back to what you were talking about. I think to get the sport to really grow, we really need to encourage people in other locations and we need to be willing to travel to support them too, you know. And we when we had it's probably the early part of MGAA. There was a big Midwest contingency out there, and we traveled to Kentucky quite a bit to go support them. And we went out to Indiana one time. We've been to Canada 3 or 4 times, and kind of hate that we don't do that anymore. But we really need to support people, and I'm excited about the possibility of getting something started down in the Southeast.
Yeah.
But we really, like I said, we just really need to support these people and be willing to travel some if we can.
No, you're absolutely right. I even remember when I first started, advertised on like the calendar and like just started in games, there was like a competition in California. I remember there being
Yeah, that'd be a little hard to support.
Yeah.
But
No, but we you're right though. We were a little bit more spread out. And if everybody just reached a little bit, we would start touching on new pockets of riders who could then keep taking it,
Mhm.
to other regions. And you're so like we've been talking about, hey, do we want to travel down to Kentucky, later on this year and just working out the logistics of like our vehicle. But to be honest, there are so many people that travel that are willing to like help, pick up a pony or give a ride or even lend out a pony. So it shouldn't really be a barrier to going out. And you're
Yeah,
right, we've got to be supportive.
we used to for a while. We were getting a big horse transport trailer, the tractor trailer that would haul 15 horses. And we were able to fill it up and it would leave, out of our area and travel down to Kentucky. And then we'd, take all of our gear down and meet the trailer when they got there. And we did that for quite a while too. And it wasn't overly expensive. I want to say it was, I for some reason $150 is standing out. I'm sure it's at least double or maybe triple that now, but it seemed like it was like $150 a pony round trip, and so it was, that
Such a
was
good
20
idea.
years ago.
That is
But
a good
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
But
So
being
that
able to
worked
fill
really.
up the trailer too, I mean, that would
Yeah,
save you a bunch of money. And that's a really good
yeah.
idea.
So
Maybe we should talk about that.
yeah, yeah.
And we've got the whole group that's coming up, like you said, down in the Georgia area. So that's any opportunity anybody has to go down there and support those folks. Like you said, Carol Ann, she's working to host a competition coming up here that I believe she's going to be posting, but she's trying to get clinics and stuff moving in the southern part of Virginia, again, just to reach out to more riders. So absolutely need to be supportive of those people who are advocating and trying to grow the organization, but also to new organizers. So I got my feet wet in the past year, just starting to organize some little stuff. And it is so much work and it's so rewarding, but we need people who are willing to step up and do that because it's
Mhm.
it's necessary. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to grow.
That's true. That's very true. And I mean, a competition set of equipment can be a problem too. And I don't know, maybe, that's something I know that the organization is trying to support people with that as well. And so,
and reach out. People who are looking to start developing something in their region, definitely reach out both to, our organization or USMGA. So I say ours, I'm part of MGAA just because it's really in my region. We've got MGAA, we've got USMGA. If you're in Canada, there's organizations all over, but reach out to their board or leadership and ask them about getting support for your area. And, if necessary, just post in one of the forums. I have a bunch of equipment I've started to pull together. I know that other people do as well. And sometimes people are willing to pitch in just to get something off the ground.
Yeah, you can borrow equipment or you can even rent it from the board. So that's even a possibility. If you just want it like short term, just go pick it up, have it for a weekend, drop it back off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Well, Stacey has been organizing for years, and we appreciate it because it's kind of a thankless job, but you have helped to maintain, our big Mid-Atlantic series that we host here. And we do appreciate all the time that you put into organizing. It's so much work, but also, I mean, you've been involved in like leadership roles, and you've just been present within the organization for so many years. And so we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And it's just something I believe in. A few years ago, probably 7 years ago now, Brett said, "Mom, should I be an adult and stop riding mounted games?" And I said, do you still enjoy it? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, well, it's something that keeps you in shape. And I said, you're going to spend your money on something. So if it's not ponies or whatever, it's going to be something else. And I said, as long as you're still having fun and, it's a family thing we can do, I said, I keep at it as long as you want to. And so, and it's just something I love doing as a family. And I really believe it's a great thing. So keep doing as much as I can for it.
No, I absolutely agree. It gets to that balancing act as an adult, right? But it's so worth it.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, any closing thoughts, Carly?
No, we're good.
All right. Then we can do like our out segment. So thank you so much, Stacey. We really appreciate you coming on to the show and spending a little over an hour here with us. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll probably have you back someday too. So anybody who is watching, please like, subscribe. We've got Facebook, we've got TikTok, Instagram, and of course our YouTube channel. We'll be continuing to expand content. We've got interviews like this and many other lined up for the future. So please hang around.
You're listening to Unbridled with your host, Genevieve and Carly. Welcome to Unbridled.